ductile spread of the waters cooled, in a moment's narrowing of the diaphragm, into a blanket of unrelieved latex. The pluck and suck that gives fair warning but does not slow our progress. And now there were only container ships, hugging the Essex shore, blocking out the oil refineries. Mucking Flats, Lower Horse, Deadman's Point, Canvey. "Cowards!" howled the resurrected K. The tide was with us, the wind, the light. We were expelled, cut loose. "Good riddance," said the stones. "There's nothing to go back for. The world has disappeared in our wash. We skated on the edge of an abyss." John K. had his hand on the wheel. He spat in the face of the Furies. He had already taken off his dark glasses and flung them over the side. With his winking, lidless eye, he looked 1,000 years old. His flapping, tent-show skin, he was something carried in a cardboard box from the crypt of Christchurch Spitalfields. He grinned like a mummy. His teeth were black wood. He hemorrhaged sawdust from every seam. He'd locked himself totally into some older journey, outfoxing the Coast Guard, Harry Morgan off the Florida Keys. Go for it! He had run beyond our permissions. We were bouncing towards the mystery of Sheerness. It was written. Fate. The light was infected, a bead curtain of airborne droplets. It was bad light, bugs burning up. You could smell it, the peculiar intensity of a sunstream revealing a circle of the jungle floor better left in dampened shadow. Things crawled. White eyes flashed beneath the wavelets. The clouds were at war, split by the beams of heavy searchlights. Smoke-solid skies, bone smoke, foreclosing this petty adventure. The river became all rivers, the James, the Congo, the Amazon, Eliot's Mississippi. Let the green vegetation creep down the banks. Let it smother the storage tanks. It will not yield. The river is the agent of transformation. Is that the Isle of Grain? I pointed to a headland that shone on the distant Kent shore. Nobody knew. It was unreal, a promise. It could be the beacon at Egypt Bay. It could be All Hallows. The light played with our expectations, offering a visible destination at which to aim our craft. It was all too easy. Against mythic prohibitions I looked back. Black gouts of engine oil were gushing from the outboard motor into the water. A torn shark. Surely, I thought, this is not right. This shouldn't be happening. I nudged Joblard. We were bumping against something. John K. had fulfilled his potential. He had run us aground. "But this is impossible," he bleated. "I don't believe it. The river here is 3 miles wide." He gunned the motor to a scream, churned deeper and deeper into the quaggy filth. With a groan of hurt and a radical crunch, the propeller shaft parted from its blades. Kay had done it. Give him his due. He had put us ashore on the notorious Blythe Sands. And we were not the first. We fought for space in these temperamental paddies, these bury-yourself swamps, with the wrecks of East Indiamen, colonists, convicts, merchants, brides, the rum-soaked soldiery. We hardly merited an entry in the log of nautical disasters. We had nothing to leave in the sands except our bones. Many vessels waited for months at Gravesend, commissioned, provisioned, crewed, and needing clearance. A letter from the owners. They came so soon to grief. An old acquaintance, the Paul Kelver, had anchored on the borders of the sandbank to wait her turn for the pilot boat. We could see the condemned horses as they fretted and stamped. Joblard rubbed his hands. Nothing made him happier than the arrival of a long-anticipated trauma. Now it could only get worse. He had unzipped a Jacobean gash of teeth. The fates were in the mood to indulge him. The skies darkened, they lost all muscle tone, and fell. They pressed on the horizon, leaving us with nothing to admire but a thin mercury column. We were imprisoned in a radiation helmet, a black chimney of soot. We were blinking at what was left of the world through the slit of a visor. A wind of hate rushed past us, spitting and gobbing, kicking green water over the bows. A sheet of rain, a rain hoarding, solid as steel, swept at us from the frame of the open sea. "Can't we pull ourselves out of here?" I asked, bright-eyed as a rover scout. "Isn't there a rope?" Kay cackled until he shook. His eyes were rolling like lubricated bearings. His single lid shorted and twitched. He drooled. He knew it was all over. This was the image he had spent his life searching for, driving through deserts, begging for mayhem. This was it. To turn around, to run aground, with two blistering, blustering inadequates in the middle of the widest stretch of the Thames, the tide on the turn, head on to a gathering storm. A storm? A storm among storms. The storm. The winds were the vessels of wrath, named vortices of bad will, self-inflicted and gaining in strength, rushing and fleeing into the vacuum of our fear. They did not hesitate to expose all of our defects, the greed, the violence, the jealousy, the hatred. We had nothing behind us but the safe harbour of boredom and complacency. We were defenceless. We saw in this personalised weather all the things we had never quite dared to imagine. Rain stripped us in a hail of blades. Our shirts were rags. Joblad's orange distress flare jacket stuck to him like an acid-attack skin. We were drowning where we stood. But I didn't want John Kay for company on that journey. I decided to go over the side. I pulled off my sodden corduroys, and I jumped. The water came halfway up my thighs, and the sand was firm. Joblad, lurching like King Kong with a migraine, followed me. He had lost his spectacles and was blind to the horrors that surrounded him. He could have gone under and never noticed it. He grabbed a boat hook, wrapped the tow rope around his shoulder, and took off in the general direction of Norway, a deleted icon of St. Christopher as a sumo wrestler. I shoved at the stern. The boat had taken plenty of water. Rain was filling it like a moulded bird bath. But it moved. It shifted. John Kay sat on the cabin roof, tailor fashion, and watched us. The calm epicentre, the target. He was crossing the desert again, sand to water, water to sand. The rope stretched out. Joblad vanished, deep among canyons of rearing swell. Waves broke over his head. He roared. He shouted something we could not hear. For a moment we glimpsed him again, clinging crazily to his staff, blowing and swallowing and gasping for breath. Broken spears of lightning pitched from the black sky, antlers of white fire, cracks in the glass, sounds of rending and tearing, ripples of thunder. The night guns were all blazing, booming and echoing. Stereophonic shockwaves tagged the mucoid dome, bringing to life the theoretical pattern of the shore defences. They fizzed and short-circuited in sprays like pinball madness. One of the horses, driven to risk everything, smashed free of its pen and plunged from the side of the pitching container ship. It was immediately lost in deep water, swimming or drowning. The elements were all assembled for a minor apocalypse. They posed, daring some fool to try and describe them. I left the reunion and fought my way towards Joblad. The sea was now the darkness of ignorance. I saw John Kay in a sequence of flash frames lit by strokes of lightning. Electrical anomalies played tricks with my vision. I saw two men in the boat. Kay was crouching in the stern, trying to coax the outboard into life, frantic to escape from the very thing that was confronting him on the cabin roof. A second and more convincing portrayal of himself. This miniature being was cross-legged and webbed in a graft of inky shadows. His wet hair rose into stiffened peaks or horns. His finger pointed in accusation at the heavens. Kay saw himself as the beast, the other, the stranger in the cutter, Okeus, Jack Smith, Spring-Heeled Jack. The names meant nothing. He had run out of aliases. The stranger's long arm hung over the side, obliterating the E in the boat's title. John Kay had indisputed command of the motorized ashtray, Runnion. He cowered like the sailor's wife, with chestnuts in her lap, from the Scottish play. He waited on the coming of the witches, the bearded women. And then the lightning found its target, the irritation of the matchbox television, still flickering its feeble interference, guided the jagged discharge towards John Kay's trouser pocket. The Runnion was a fireball, cheap plastic wrinkled and contracted like an anteater's mouth. Kay was on his feet, naked, winged with flame, wrestling his double. He was magnificent. He soliloquized defiance, holding and damning. The scorched skin justified at last its pensioned deformity. I was holding a limp rope. I was attached to nothing. I called out for Joblot. I listened. I was standing in the middle of the estuary, neither in the sea nor on the river, somewhere uncharted, between Canvey Island and St. Mary's Marches. It was too far to walk and too shallow to swim. The direction to follow was the erased track of a panicked horse, the guide whose whims no pilgrim could anticipate.